Good evening to everybody. Welcome from Team Mentors Capital and a very, very warm welcome to all of our participants today. Well, I'm sure you guys are having a fun day with the events that ISEC has lined up for you. Yeah, I'm going to take a couple of minutes and quickly tell you about what we do about Mentors Capital and this initiative called MC Connect. And then we'll get into the panel discussion on networking. That's the agenda for the day. Right? So very quickly, the thought behind Mentors Capital stems from the kind of options that students have right after college. I think that's where the trouble begins, right after school. It's when you go through a shift in phase shift, as we call it, is when you start to face these questions. What career do I choose? What program should I study? Where do I go study this, right? These millions of questions come up and you're trying to find answers. And I guess that's where we wanted to position ourselves to be able to answer your queries to make your life a little simpler. So what do we do? Well, we're a platform that, I'd like to think of us as actually a network of mentors, expert mentors who've, had diverse journeys to achieve their own way of success. This includes people who are current students in colleges, maybe some of them academicians, and most of them actually professionals from diverse fields, right? And the reason why this platform is in existence is so you can, visit our website, visit our platform, connect with somebody that fits with your requirement, maybe studying a program that you want to study, working in a field that you want to work in, or just simply put, connects with the kind of people, the kind of profile that you're looking for. And once you can establish that one-on-one connection, I think mentorship is the single solution to all your queries, right? You want to ask him or her about how careers are like, what are the requirements in a particular field, how to get into your dream college or dream university, and all of these questions are answerable from an expert at our end. Yeah, and like I said, we have people from diverse fields, and these are some of the brands that our mentors are associated with. You can see that these are and sorry, I'm just getting some right. Right. So some of these, experts come from diverse backgrounds. Like I said, we just wrapped up our IM admissions, process, and we got somebody from, the IM selection committee to come sit and interact with students. And I think it's made a difference because it's starting to come out. And a lot of people have made it into top IMs, right? So I think this process works. I know from personal experience, mentorship can play a big role. And on top of it, besides just giving you advice, I think we also offer a host of services which include preparation for exams, applying to colleges in India and abroad, the works. Okay, I'm not going to waste much of your time. Quickly going to leave you with this one last message that hey, the first interaction with a mentor on our platform is going to be free of cost. So please start exploring. Please do check out how the platform is. Give us feedback about how your experience was. And I think we both can learn and grow along the way, right? What are we doing here? Well, MC Connect is an initiative where we get mentors to connect with student audiences, talk about a particular agenda on a given day, just like, we spoke with, economists from London School of Economics, MBA from the INSEAD School. Just this morning, we had a fascinating discussion on design thinking and how it's one of the things that's a buzzword today. A lot of opportunities in that field today, and right now we are here to do a panel discussion on networking. So that's where we at. Without much ado, I'm gonna jump right into the discussion, and we're gonna line up. Yes, all of us are here. Okay. Quickly, networking is a word that we've all sort of felt in our own individual journeys. I think the very definition of networking is the act of connecting with people and with the express purpose of exchanging ideas, information, and obviously making connections along the way, right? So from the onset, it's a word that each of us understands. I think it's a word which is slightly misunderstood in today's world, because there is this extra connotation that it's forced, that somehow there's an element of being fake, or that you tend to be selfish when you're trying to network with others. But from where I'm sitting, I think we've all networked from childhood, right? We learn from our, from our immediate kith and kin, from parents, from brothers, sisters. We learn from our teachers at school. We, I think, grow as a community from the friends that we have. So networking is something which is inherently built into our DNA, right? But the question is not whether networking is good or bad. The question is how important is it? And that's the purpose of this panel discussion, is to ask professionals and successful people from different walks of life how they felt networking impacted, various stages. And for this purpose, in today's panel discussion, what the approach we will follow is that we're going to break this discussion down into three different segments. In each segment, I'm going to focus on a particular area, which hopefully all of you guys can relate with. It's important from a career journey perspective. And so we'll also try to keep it interactive. I'm going to throw a couple of polls. I'd like you guys to interact, answer those polls, help us, shape the discussion, and hopefully along the way learn something new. Okay, so first on board, I would like to welcome Aditya. Aditya is a is a very energetic chap. I think he's one of the most energetic people I've ever known. He comes from a very interesting background. After completing his engineering from Anna University, that's the Sri Venkateswara College of Engineering, he's been pursuing a career in energy, in the energy sector, specifically renewable space. Just before I get him on board, I'm going to share the poll. We can all see the results of what you mark. So do let us know what your thoughts are on career choice, stream choice. But my question to you, Aditya, would be, so you went from engineering, electrical engineering to, renewable space, and chose a very niche area within that. Yeah. How did you make this choice? And do you think networking played a role in making this choice, in you making this choice?
I'll take the last question first, absolutely. But before getting more detail into this, thanks again for inviting us. Thanks again for inviting me. This is a wonderful opportunity. All of us here, I think most of the panelists also I know through networking for that matter. And I've had multiple synergies. I know you were going to touch up on that, so you stole your thunder here. But it's just wonderful to have this platform to speak with a lot of people who are at least interested in hearing about our experiences and message. So thanks again for organizing this. Second question to you before I get to answering your questions: do we also get to vote on the poll, or is it only for the audience?
No, unfortunately, we're all co-hosts. We only get to observe. We do not get a say in the matter.
Damn it! I might have moved the needle in some of those answers to try to get the agenda moving along. But yeah, very interesting way of engaging on, and thank you again for that. So yes, maybe I'll just give a little bit of background of where I am, what I'm doing and stuff, and then I could answer that question. It could help through the process. So again, hi everyone, I'm Aditya. Thanks for taking time to join this panel on a Saturday evening. We will definitely try and make it very interesting for all of you. So I'm excited about that. I'm from Chennai. I'm a pure South Indian. I'm very proud as well to be from this city. Did my schooling here, majored in science, and then decided to take up electrical engineering. Funnily enough, because my parents told me to take it up, I actually wanted to be a mechanical engineer because I thought I had an eye for design. But it's all worked out right now, because as you progress in your career, you just sort of realize that it's all, interdepartmental. You learn things in another space and you're able to implement it as well. So that's the biggest takeaway I've had so far in my journey. Yeah. I chose to pursue, contrary to the way I got into electrical engineering, my choice for getting into renewable energy was actually quite specific. I had done a couple of internships in leading renewable energy companies. I'm sure all of you have heard of this wind energy company called Vestas. I did one over there. And the second internship was at IIT Madras, which really helped me hone into my area of interest. But it is quite interesting as well that while doing those internships, I was quite particular that I wanted to get into the wind sector. But once I decided to pursue the degree and went through the experiences that I did during my master's program at TU Delft, which was again focused on sustainable energy technologies, I found out that maybe I was not cut out for wind as much as I was cut out for solar. So I'd say that I honed in on, I decided to focus on renewable energy as my master's because first thing, I don't think my electrical fundamentals were excellent, typical product of Anna University education. I'm just kidding, but I think I was in a rush to just finish my degree and get out and explore the world. But thanks to those internships and thanks to, of course, the networking portion, which I will touch upon in a bit, it was very, very helpful to help me understand that maybe this is the sector for the future. And that was one of the reasons why I decided to pursue renewable energy for my master's. Now, did networking play a big role in my decision making? Absolutely. I think I was not a very academic person, and as Anand said, we grow up in an environment where hopefully, I mean, I don't see a lot of kids these days have that kind of a community atmosphere, but let's just say like we all sort of grew up in an environment where we played a lot outside and not so much on the internet, so to speak. And I think networking for me started over there, to be very honest. I just didn't understand that that was very important at that point of time. But it just got to a point where while I was doing my undergraduate studies, I was lucky enough to have like a couple of mentors at college as well as my parents who are scientists themselves to tell me that you have to put yourself out there and really understand and get perspectives from how people approach life. I think that's the most important advice that I've been given in my life, and I try to pass it forward as a suggestion, of course. Now you may ask, this seems like a job for only extroverts, not really introverts. I'll be very honest with you. I mean, people who know me really well, all panelists for that matter, know me as an extrovert, but there has been a time when I was a very big introvert and I did not have the courage, I did not have the confidence to go and walk up to people and have a conversation. But I think it is something that you can actually work on, like many other skills that you actually end up picking up along the way. So I did end up putting a lot of effort. You fail quite a bit actually at networking. A lot of people, what they don't realize is they think that when they reach out, as Anand said, for a professional recommendation or a professional mentorship or some sort of a networking angle in that way, that it is bad to not hear a response. It's actually like a game. I'm sure Varun's going to speak about it and Krishna's going to speak about it in a bit, but it's like a game. Like it's a hit or a miss. It's like rolling a die and just getting, or like tossing a card and just getting like a heads or tails. So people are going to respond to you, and it's then up to you to ensure that that conversation continues and you extract value from that conversation for yourself, but also maintain a relationship with those people who have taken time to speak with you. So in my decision making case, it was very interesting for me because I had a lot of professors, I had a lot of industry experts as well who I genuinely did not have the confidence to reach out to, but I somehow mustered the courage to go and have a conversation, and you find out that all of these people actually don't bite. A lot of them do want to help bright young kids get into the industry, contribute really well. And after having multiple conversations with that overnight, I'd say I probably became like a full-blown networking junkie by the end of my second year in college. And ever since then, it's been a very integral part of my life. As a matter of fact, and Krishna's going to speak after this, and Varun as well. Um, we all are part of a very big community building company that we've started together. So you never know where it's going to help, but I think those conversations that I had my second and my third year was very, very instrumental in me saying that I want to pick up renewable energy as my as my track. Not only because I wasn't great at academics and I wanted to do something in a niche space, but rather the niche space or the understanding that it was a niche space that is going to explode in the decade was advice that I got from my network. So I don't want to ramble on more, but this is, I think, the most important thing that the networking aspect of my life did to me during my undergrad.
Right. Aditya, I think Aditya, I think you've gone on mute. Yeah.
Is it okay now? Sorry. Yeah. So basically, I'm just super lucky to have had this experience, and now I'm able to share it with you guys. Even this morning, for that matter, as Anand just said, he hosted a session. I had a couple of mentees through Anand come to me and speak as well this morning. So I was just excited to pass on, this journey. So I mean, just an open invitation to everybody, anybody on this call, if you guys want to have a chat, we're all more than happy. I'm more than happy to do it. Thanks, Anand.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Adi. I think one of the things that I started off with was this sense that people have that, hey, it's networking is something that only extroverts can do, and it's something which comes across as something that's put on and it's fake. And I think what Aditya is telling us that put all of those thoughts to rest. I think effort is what counts, especially when you're trying to reach out to people. You're gonna hit a brick wall most of the time, and well, it's part of the par for the course. But yeah, I think at the end of it, I think that one successful mentorship conversation can really lead to a big impact, and I think that's something that we are trying to do on our platform as well. Okay, so I'm gonna now go over to Krishnan. Well, to give you guys a brief background about Krishnan, although I let him talk about his his journey and his credentials, but suffice to say that here's a data scientist who's studied from NIT Surat, went on to do his masters from Texas A&M University, is currently a data scientist, and that's where my question sort of stems from, because here's a field which is intensely technical, involves data, numbers, and my guess is a desk job, right? So what does that do? What does that mean for networking in a networking sense? And more importantly, how does it shape you, right? What did you, through your experiences, first at Surat and then at Texas, and then at work now, how do you think you've evolved as a person, and has that changed your perspective on networking?
Yeah. Firstly, thank you, Anand, and thank you to everybody here for having me. Good evening, everyone, and hopefully everyone's doing safe and everyone's healthy. So that's that. And I just want to talk a little bit about networking first, right? I think we touched a little bit on the fact that introverts can't be networking and so on, but I would say the networking comes from the basic nature of the human race, right? Like we were cavemen, and then we came out of the cave, we saw the sun, we saw the river, we wanted to go past the river, then we moved past some lands, we moved to other places, then we crossed continents, and now we are trying to cross planets. We went to the moon, and now we're going to the Mars as well. So we are the human race is a society of explorers, right? So we are all actually, we are hardwired to network and go out and find new lands and find new pastures. So anybody who thinks networking is only for a small set of people, I think you should just go back and check the past. Humans, the human race is filled with explorers, right, from the beginning of time. So with that, coming to the data science part of things, right, I think people look at numbers as being completely independent of the real world, but that's farther from the truth, right? Like I think numbers tell a lot of things, but you actually need to understand a part of what you're doing in the real world to say that this number means something. Because sure, a number can tell you something. So a classic example would be something, let's take the movie Moneyball, right? Like, so what Moneyball would be telling is that you would say, it'll give me a number saying that this person X is good or this person X is bad. But how do you actually know that, right? Like, so you have to come up with some objective ways of analyzing, and again that requires a human understanding of the field itself, and that is what you would actually put it into your, let's say, your data model or your data science model or whatever it is that you're trying to build. So I would say that it's actually a constant process. You need to understand the field to actually make the model, and you need to understand the model to take it back. So it's a little more a symbiotic relationship, and it's not actually a situation where the numbers are completely distant. I am just putting everything into a black box and it's just giving me something up. And anybody who is working that way would most probably end up in the long run not doing that sustainably well. And I would say that whether it is data science or whether it is any other field, right? Like what we could try to be is to aspire to be people of value, to be creators, and the network will then find itself and come to you. Because as we keep creating and as we keep doing new things and putting out new work, the network will start falling in place itself. And because people are driven towards new good content, people want to see better content and people want to do better things, and so people will themselves reach out to you. So I would say be a person of value and the network will come to you, and that's just the way it is. Thank you.
I actually have a follow-on question for you, Krishnan. I mean, this stems partly from the data that we've gotten in from the polls, which seem to suggest broadly that at least half of the people who responded on the polls are saying that, well, they know what they want to do more or less, but are still inclined to sort of explore, right? Explore career choice. So my question to you is, well, data science right now is a very big buzzword. Everybody's thinking data science. I mean,
Right.
irrespective of what field you come from. But back in the day, it's not so popular, not so obvious.
Right.
So what helped you latch on to a trend which was latent at least at that stage in time, at that point in time, and how did you vet all of this information? Like you must have, did you reach out to experts? Did you reach out to some networks that helped you
Right.
arrive at the choice?
I think I've been fairly fortunate in my life, and a lot of the network is decided based on which college you go to. So if we see, if let's say I am a student of Harvard University, right? Like I would end up having a network, or I'll have an alumnus who is like who's probably going to be the CEO, who are going to be big lawyers somewhere, who are going to be people going a lot of places, right? And so a lot of your network is determined by the people around you and where you go and study. And a lot of in throughout my career path, I've been fortunate enough that the previous step has helped me take the next step. So I'm a mechanical engineer. I did my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and mechanical engineering led me to take up industrial engineering as a master's degree. And from industrial engineering, I ended up taking operations research, and operations research helped me get into data science. Data science then became its own thing. So you would say that mechanical engineering led you to computer engineering, but everything has its own connection. It's very easy to connect the dots looking back, but when you're going forward, it's harder to do that. And I think like we can see Atul over here he's at ISB, right? And a lot of times the college that you go to, the who you are, uh, it kind of then your network gets decided based on that. But now again with social media and a lot of other platforms, you have the opportunity to reach out to people who are not in the same college, who you may not reach out to otherwise, and that actually makes a lot of difference. So it's okay, like take a shot, try reaching out to people. What's the worst thing? It's just going to be the same situation as you are in right now. So take a shot, reach out to people, doesn't matter, drop them a mail. It's like I don't know, it's like what the Nigerian princes look at in terms of their emails, right? Like they look at it in terms of scale. They'll like drop like 1 million emails and like 2 people will respond, and out of that it's a very very low return percentage. But if you look at it, they still manage to get the job done with just those two. So we are not Nigerian princes or anything, but take the shot, take the chance. Like if 3 people respond to you, that's still great. And I would say feel free, right? Like don't feel like don't feel shame, or don't feel like being in a closed loop. Just reach out.
All right. I think the biggest takeaway I get from here is that sometimes, where you land up, the choices you make get you to places, and the places you get to might define the networks you can access.
Absolutely.
For good or for worse, those networks might also tend to define your choices, right? So
Yeah.
I guess, we're at that stage where all of you guys, at least I'm making a general assessment here on the audience, is that you guys are at important junctures in life. You're making important decisions. And I think networking in one sense will definitely help you explore the option that you have in mind and maybe a few others along the way. And that's why the second poll, the second section, which is how do we explore options and how do we build, a profile? Because I mean that's one of the most important things for us to do. And internships play a big role here. Do let us know in the poll what what choices you've made, what where you are at this stage. But I think I'm going to bring Roshini onto the discussion now. Roshini also is a dynamic individual. She runs her own digital marketing agency. It's called Experienzing. From all my interactions with her, I find her to be always very analytical about situations. So I'm going to pose her a very simple question. Well, Krishnan just told us that your networks define, in a sense, at least the access to information that you have. But then isn't that like a chicken and egg situation where if you're not from a really good school, and I say that keeping in mind that you're already from an alumnus of the Stella Maris College before you went and did your postgrad, but are there any other alternative ways of accessing networks, right? Because networking can't just be reliant on your schoolmates and LinkedIn. Are there any other ways of widening the network, so to say?
Hi, yeah. So absolutely, I'm going to get to that. But before that, let me just quickly, introduce myself. Like Anand just said, I'm Roshini. Like I think the rest of us as well, just purely born and bred in Chennai. I did my undergrad in economics, and I thought this is something I really want to do. I did go on to do my master's in economics as well. And I'm just, this does not particularly pertain to networking, but I think just because of the cohort of people that we are talking to, I'm just going to go ahead and add that I think education and formal education primarily does two things, right? It either conforms your choices to say, you know what, I like to do this, I've studied this, and I'm sure I want to go here, or it eliminates your choices, right? And for me, it was sort of like a process of elimination, because I did my master's in economics, and then I said, I don't think I want to go down this path, and I pivoted to marketing. And I think networking has played a big role in that pivot, because here I was having studied this particular subject for like 5 years, and then I realized, hey, I don't want to do this. And I was very scared of entering another field without something, right? Without some kind of information. What I did was I sort of, thought about the skills that I have and not the subject that I was interested in. I'd walk past like a storefront and I would think, hey, like I think they could have done this better. Or I'd look at a website and I think, you know what, like I don't understand what they're trying to say. Like, I think this could have been written better. So I did not know that was marketing, right? And I talked to people. I said, these are things I'm broadly interested in. What do you think? Which industry do you think I can sort of be in? And people said marketing, right? And I think a lot of times we think of an industry and we only are equipped like with the theoretical knowledge of what you need to be in that industry, but you don't know what people do on a day-to-day basis, right? And again, for me, I talk to people people in marketing and I say, so what does your day look like? What do you do on an everyday basis? And for me, these are the questions that I asked while networking. It was not just, what company do you work at? It's networking is not just like an exchange of cards, right? It's an exchange of ideas. And so I'm just going to also go back to, one of the first questions that you asked, that people think networking is sort of selfish. And I think there's always quid pro quo in networking. There always needs to be sort of a give and take. I think sometimes people wonder, especially students, they think, what do I have to give? But I think just explicitly going out and stating that, hey, can I have your mentorship or can I have your guidance? There's a lot of gratitude. There's a lot of gratification in that. And that is what like people get. And that is what you can give someone back in return. It need not be, quantitative way in which you can contribute to them, but just explicitly stating that, I want you to be my mentor. There's a lot of gratification in that. So that being said, let me just, come to your question where you asked, what are some alternative methods of networking? If this is, if you're already defined by the network that you have in college or in school, how do you go about expanding that? Just from my personal experience, my network has not just been my network, but my networks and their networks and their networks. And I think that's a great place to start, to reach out to your network and say, hey, I am looking to get in touch with someone that is in this industry. Do you know someone? Right? And people are more than happy to help, right? And I think that's also a way that I have expanded my network. Even the people in this panel, like we talk on an everyday basis, and we're always asking each other if there are people that might know in a particular industry. And I think that's sort of how one of the simplest ways in which you can expand on the network that you already have, like not going out and I understand like cold calling or cold messaging can be very intimidating for a lot of people, right? And to just like loop back to what Krishnan said, it need not be something that's just for extroverts. You can just leverage your own network into building it, right? Yeah, so that's does that answer your question? Do you have anything more specific I can answer?
Well, no, actually not. And I think I'm going to add to your answer and say that, well, sometimes it helps if you can get access to aggregations, right? Aggregations that are already available. And I guess one such aggregation is what we at Mentors Capital offer, right? Because Roshini clearly said, when you're trying to reach out to the networks of your networks, you need to define your problem clearly from the start. This is what I seek. This is the kind of career I want to look at. These are the kind of programs I choose or sectors that I'd like to look at. And whether it's LinkedIn, it's your parents or your friends, or a platform like Mentors Capital, I think that will go a long way in filtering out your connections, right? I think
absolutely. If I would just quickly chime in. So like just when I said, talking about expanding on your existing network, I'll tell you why I think this has like a high rate of conversion. Because there is already interest in someone's part to want to help you, right? That is one. And there is also a specificity of the ask. That you're interested in people that are in a particular industry, that are in a particular role. So I think this specificity and just this willingness is why it's great. And I think when you told me about Mentors Capital, that's why I thought it was really great, because it had both of these components. There are people that have the background, and there are also people that really want to help you, right?
Absolutely. And it's wonderful to have each one of you on our platform, and in fact today in this panel discussion, because I think there are new perspectives that each of you bring in, and that's, I guess, what we are here. All right, I'm now going to shift over to Varun. Well, what can I say about Varun? I think he's seen more continents than most countries than most people have seen states within India. So you've seen the world. He's somebody who studied information science from Purdue. Is an alma mater. He's an alumnus also of the Berkeley, of the University of Berkeley, and well, he also very professionally speaking, there is a fascinating question in terms of your choice to go from studying information science and to now, you building a community around gaming, right? And just the niche that you've chosen for yourself, I think almost precedes, my question, because, how did you make that choice? Because it clearly can't have been in isolation. You clearly have to have vetted it from a lot of people. So how did that happen, I guess, is my question.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, Varun, we can hear you now.
Hello, my name is Varun. Thank you for that introduction, Anand. Before I actually get into answering your question, I'd just like to add to something Roshini was speaking about just now. I think she mentioned how networking, mentorship isn't about just exchanging cards, it's about exchanging ideas. And then she went on to elaborate on that a little bit. And I'd like to say, just, sort of in a nutshell, a lot of the things she said in a package after that is to say that networking is about also exchanging value. The person at the other end is getting something from you, just as you're getting something from them. And understanding that fundamentally, and also pushing yourself to offer value to people is in many ways how you're going to get access to more and more people. So I think you guys should think about that when you're reaching out to people, when you're connecting with people, when you're speaking to someone, every day, try to offer the people around you, the people you meet, something. And then you'll find that suddenly a lot of people want to meet you. They want to speak to you. They want to introduce their networks to you because you offer value. And I think that's a really powerful way to make sure people remember you and people want to speak to you and meet you and, get engaged with you. Just sorry about that. Seg, I'll get into the question you were asking me. I had a pretty typical South Indian educational background. I ended up doing engineering. I studied electrical engineering at Berkeley, and then finished my degree with information science. And I pottered around, consulting in software engineering for a bunch of different people. And I worked in logistics for a little while, in healthcare, in retail, all of that from a software engineering and tech consulting perspective. And about 6 years ago, I moved back to Singapore, where I grew up and went to school before I went to college in California. Moved back to Singapore, and I was out with some friends getting some drinks, and we were, I think this was, MCU was just sort of, gearing up and becoming awesome at that point. And the Mahabharat series was going on at that point, right? On, I think it was Z, no, Star Vijay had Mahabharat, yeah. So they had that going on, and, MCU was like, everyone's all about MCU. And we were like, I'm sorry, I can't swear on here, I think, but we were like, basically, what the hell? How come, we don't have awesome shit like this about Indian mythology? And I'm an avid gamer. I think there's a lot of overlap between the whole engineering background, people playing games and stuff. And we're like, you know what? We're engineers. We cut code. Let's make some of these games, right? We can make games based on, all these characters from Indian mythology, and then they should be in these games. And that sort of conversation very quickly snowballed into saying, let's make a game. All right. And once we got to saying, let's make a game, and then, the people with a little bit more sense and business mindedness stepped in and said, you know what, we need to figure out if anyone's going to buy your game and, anyone wants to play your game. So we said we'd make a tabletop game, we'd make a board game, a card game based on Indian mythology. We'll take it to market. Let's see what happens. Let's see what people like, see what people want to do. So once we got there, that sort of moved further. We started a company. We published a game based on Indian mythology. And then I was traveling a lot to India at that point. And I realized most of my customers were Indians living outside India, right? People in India weren't really interested in this, or, they didn't really quite know what to make of it. And a couple of years after that, I happened to move to India because one of my old bosses said, I'm starting a new company. Let's do this. So I moved here, networking, by the way. Yeah. And then once I was here, since I'm here, let's get people playing some games, since no one's playing a lot of games here. I started a board game sort of community meetup thing. We used to meet up on Sundays or weeknights to play board games at cafes and bars and stuff like that. And that sort of, really snowballed into a bigger group, and met some people who wanted to put some money in it. So we thought, this is a viable business, and I opened a board game cafe. When I opened a board game cafe, we realized, we have a cafe. Someone needs to actually take care of running a restaurant. So I had to learn that, but again, we spoke to people, right? We spoke to other people running restaurants. We spoke to some friends. We reached out to, we basically, cold called people, walked into the Leela, spoke to some chefs there and tried to poach them. And they were like, no, you're crazy. But, you got to have those conversations before you realize what you can and cannot do. And now I run a restaurant. So that's sort of how that trajectory happened. And I think one of the themes along the way that you might have noticed is that all of that is about networking, right? My old boss called me back and said, come join me, because, he wanted to work with me. I had to walk up into Leela and say, I was at a restaurant there and said, hey, let me speak to your chef. And I also did that at random restaurants here, like little box carts. I spoke to the guys cooking the food there and said, how do you do this? Can I look in your kitchen? And all of that, networking is all of that, right? Obviously, different people are going to have access to different things that let you demonstrate the value you bring. I've been really lucky in that sense. I think it's undeniable that, when I open my mouth and speak, people respond. And, those biases are going to exist every day. And you're going to have to fight through them sometimes if you don't have those advantages. But wherever you do have them, you got to use them. And always, think about, what am I bringing to the table? How am I going to show this person that speaking to me is useful? It's a good expenditure of his time. So he's going to grow, I'm going to grow. And that's how you get people really, being happy to connect with you.
Right. So that was, fascinating journey to say the least. But I think a couple of really, really important points that Varun makes here in terms of, obviously networking being the spinal cord, the backbone of his journey, academic, professional journey, and even, and for those of you who don't already know, he runs Boardroom Cafe, which is based out of our very own Chennai, and I invite all of you to go definitely visit. Give it a visit once the pandemic ends, obviously. But I think the central idea, and I'm also referring to your responses on the poll. We did ask you about internships and what's your perspective, around internships, and I couldn't but notice that most of you say things like, hey, I think it's a great way to experience a new job, a new domain or a field, maybe find out if I'm passionate about it or not. Well, sure, it does do that, but very few people are thinking on the lines of, hey, I'm going to meet a new person in terms of my boss and 10 other people that I'm going to be working with, and each of these is potentially a new community, a new network I'm building. And I think Varun would be one of the first people to tell you that that's the kind of extended network that really comes into play, especially in today's interconnected world. Right? So just keep that somewhere in the back of your mind. All right. Next up, I've created, I think I've sent across the next set of poll questions. Do let us know what your responses are. Well, I think I'm going to bring in Atul into the discussion at this point. His t-shirt tells us what he's going to talk about. His journey at the Indian School of Business, one of India's best B schools. Well, I'm going to rival him because I'm Bangalore. So, but I guess my the other thing I should tell you about Atul is that he's also the VP of AllServe, a very successful startup based out of Chennai. I think you should tell us more about what your company does. But I think my question right now, and basis the audience and the kind of responses we're getting, is how do you decide? You, for one, have had more or less a stable choice of career, right? Well, you chose to study international business at undergrad. Well, you come from a business background yourself. You were interested in finance in your formative years, I gather. So studying management was kind of a no-brainer for you, right? But did you consider any other programs? And more pointedly, did you consider studying outside vis-a-vis India? And how did you make that choice? And was networking somewhere at the root of it or not?
Yeah, of course. And firstly, so thanks to Anand for inviting me for this, and a hello to everybody here. To answer that first, in class 10, when you had to choose, which stream of, of subjects that you need to choose for your class 11 and 12, I knew what I did not want to do. I did not want to be an engineer, although I aspired to be an automobile engineer at the age of 6 or 7 because I like cars as a, as a child. But of course, so I did not want to do that eventually. So I knew that, so having grown up with parents and uncles and aunts, who are all accountants. So, so I knew I had to, or I wanted to do something in those lines because I thought it was a little more interesting. And, so I'm going to shift this, a little bit towards, why is it important to have a network? And then I will bring it back into, how I joined ISB, why I even chose it. Okay. So I actually heard from the dean of Kellogg University once that, so your net worth is your network, is your net worth. Like it is so important to have, like a very strong kind of network in everything that you do. Like in the business which I am in now, this is a very service oriented business for, for elders. They will, to actually gain the trust from them, it is not an easy thing. So and we had so we had commenced this business right before like the pandemic. January 2020 was when we had started. So there was no way to do like an ad show. There's no, your only means or your primary means of of the word to get out is word of mouth. People had to tell like other people for this to actually grow. So
Atul, I think
yeah.
you
Am I okay now?
Yeah, sure. Just a suggestion, Atul. I don't think the audience is aware of AllServe, so maybe you could just quickly tell them about what AllServe does.
Okay, of course. So like I'm going to say like a couple of words about AllServe. AllServe is a senior assisted living services company. We are a platform. We are like an aggregator for all services which are required for households or for an individual. Right from a maid to a plumber to any kind of healthcare services to food to cooks to like say like any kind of concierge services like can be done through AllServe. Okay, so like in a business like this, for somebody to take even a plumber from you, they really need to trust you. They need to know who you are. That is only because of the network. I'm very fortunate to have to have been introduced to have a very strong network right from a very young age. So
you got muted again.
Yeah.
This is happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah. So like it is always like important that when so like for the for the so for like a forum today, like all these guys are in college. It is important that you should not have any motive towards trying to network. Like it is important to speak to them as friends. It is important for you to share information. It is very important for you to read and have a discussion about it with people who you meet new, and with the people who are there already in your network. It is important to gain the knowledge, grow the knowledge, which you can discuss with a new person, like when you meet him or her, so that's where people are going to have a better opinion of you, to be to invite you to a conversation like on their own. It's not that so like it is, and it is always like important to be able to to have a good kind of a behavior. Okay, in my first job, or say like my second job, I was part of a large MNC. Like every week, at least 1 or 2 like evenings in a week, there will be like a party with alcohol in it. As a young guy, so like it is always so you are invited to have drinks, you're invited to do that, but it is important for you to stay sane, and how you behave is very like important, because the next day some people may remember you, may not remember you, but like it may help, like 4 years down the line, and another thing is like how it's worked for me is I'm an active person, and I made a lot of network through my through my activities on sports. Like I had the chance to be like an entrepreneur at the age of 25. Like I ran that company for about 3 years, and we sold that company. So we raised a round of funding like in that company in 2 months, like of commencing the business. This is so this was a business in the fitness space, and it was only because about 4-5 years, prior to that, like I used to run marathons, and I used to run with like people of, the head of McKinsey was like part of this, and there were a bunch of like lawyers, all that. Okay. But I did not have any ulterior motive towards having a conversation with them. I was only trying to build my knowledge. That actually helped me for my first round of funding, where only because of my face for a new business which had no kind of an existence in the country, they were ready to give me 3 crores of money only because of my face. And they know that, and they trust me for what I have done, for what I am, and they know that I'm not going to run away with that. That is only because of the network, and I had no motive, no idea that I was going to do that ever in my life. Like it just so happened, but it is important that also, like in that journey, I had met, say about 2-3, like friends, I would say, they were interested in my, like in my path of career. They said that it is important for you to do an MBA. It is important for you to have a fallback, whether this business works or not, whether you will do well or not. It is important for you to do this. They helped me with every syllable of my application, did mock interviews, and in my GMAT, how what you need to prepare, how you need to prepare. Like, it's not that they gave me books, it's not that they gave me like access to any of like of the websites, but they told me the importance of how much time I need to invest in trying to prepare for that, invest in why like it is important for me to take it up and do it. And why I chose this was because like I wanted to be here in India, and I think the best place in the world to be here, like, and to be like is here, like anywhere like in India, because this is where you will, your growth can be a lot more here than anywhere else in the West. That is my I have a very strong, like I have a very strong like, so like opinion on that. But like I think you'll be able to grow, you'll be able to learn a lot more things here than outside also. So yeah, to have a fallback is very like important. To be part of a premium like institution will definitely make a difference, if not now, at some point of your career, so like people are going to judge you by that. And because you are part of the school, you can reach out to anybody else part of the school. You can reach out to somebody from like Chennai for your work, like if you need to travel to Delhi, or if you need a connection over there, you can open up like the forum and just send a message at random to somebody. They will reply to you if you're part of the school. So that makes a huge difference. And it is important to also do a 2-year course, like is what I hear, like as opposed to a 1-year MBA like an ISB. Your network is very small. You might not meet friends, say like if you're doing like a course for like 2 years, you meet 3 batches of people: your batch, 1 batch senior, and 1 batch junior. So you also get to meet and make friends with them. Like it's not just about the network. You don't need to know just the name and the company they like they work in. Like it is important for you to have like a social life. You want to play like a basketball, or you want to play a badminton, whatever it is. They might be part of your circles, and through whom you may or may not be able to get some kind of help. But it is important to have that kind of a social network for even people to connect you with like somebody. So like only a friend is going to connect you to his network. Like if you're not a friend, they're not going to be the chance of him or her giving you like a connection is low. So like it is important also to the reason why so like why people choose an ISB is because it is faster, and you are doing an MBA after 5-6 years of your work experience. You may or may not have the time to take 2 years of break. so that does not matter really, but like it is important to be part of like a higher education. There have been multiple so like people here like in this group, like and in the country, where they've and they've gone miles, like with just like a BCom or a BA, but that is not for everybody. It is important for you to do a course. It is important for you to study. It is important for you to also excel over there, because only like if you excel, people in the class will know you also. So so like I like if I have to use the word advice, I strongly like advise people to do a course. Like it need not be like immediately after your UG. It can be after 3-4 years, which will make a which will make a world of difference. So like mainly because uh, you get to know what it is, like in a work kind of environment, and what to learn, what not to learn, how much to prepare for. You'll know how to prepare in the last minute. So that, so that is important.
All right, thanks for I think a lot of very interesting thoughts. I think one thing that you said that made particularly a lot of sense to me was that do a 2-year MBA, join IIM Bangalore. So, besides just that, I think I get where you're coming from. In fact, I'm going to take a minute quickly talk about my personal context here. Also did my engineering, quite like most of the panelists here. At the end of engineering, I also did my engineering down south. And I mean, all of us know there's this big, trend of us heading to the US, pursuing a postgrad in your chosen field. And that was the conundrum I was in. Am I suited for a technical role? Will I do well in a management role? Will CAT happen? Will I be able to crack such a competitive exam? So I went to, went to my, relatives, and I think I found one senior relative of mine who was in the field of education, in fact. So I went, I plonked myself in front of him, and I said, hey, this is my problem. I'm not confident about whether CAT will work out or not. I don't know if I will get into a good college or not, and I need to make that choice now. And well, he did really nothing. He didn't know me. I mean, he probably was seeing me after 20 years at that point in time. So he didn't really know me. He didn't know me as a person. He didn't know me in terms of my abilities, but he could see me right in front of him. He could hear me talk. And I think he made a spot judgment, and he said, listen, forget everything else. Don't apply for a master's abroad. I think you should focus on India. And here are a couple of reasons why. And he shot me a couple of justification on that. And I think I was sold on the idea. And a year later, I'm sitting in IIM Bangalore, and I'm feeling on the top of the world. And like Atul said, I think the fact that once you get in, you have access to the batch before and the batch after really helps. I am an entrepreneur now. I think I am leveraging a lot of those connections that I made on campus. Well, I think I was also popular because of sport on campus. So again, a big sort of connect with Atul on that. But I think the biggest takeaway, and this probably ties in with all the thoughts that all the mentors gave us, is that look at mentoring less as a core, but more as a community building exercise, because everybody stands to gain when you network. Surely it might come across as you're being selfish and trying to get yourself a victory there, but in reality, I think it only works if there is a win-win. So whether it's you building a community around sport, your own passion or interests in dance, drama, theater, then I think that network will eventually pay the rewards, right? It does come back, sometime in the future to reward you, right? And this is, us as a community, I think, trying to give back to each one of you here, and hopefully some words of wisdom have been spoken here. I think you've given us a lot of your responses. I think I'm going to have a good time analyzing the results and at least understanding your context. But for now, that's the I don't have an answer to our question that we started off with. Is networking the most important skill? Well, I think most of us believe it is. Is it the most important one? Probably so. But even if it isn't, I think it's important enough for you to really make that extra bit of effort Even if you do feel uncomfortable, I think go out of your comfort zone on this. Try to meet new people every single day, every single week, every single month. And trust me, 1 year down the line, 2 years down the line, you're going to see the results of just trying to network with a conscious, as a conscious choice. Right. So that's all we had in terms of thoughts. I think we're going to open it up to the audience for any questions. Please do raise your hand on the chat. I don't think you can directly sort of start speaking. So if you raise your hand, we can unmute you. You can post a question to any of us. We'd be glad to answer. In fact, just as you do that, I got a question on the chat. And this was about how does networking help in the field of consulting? Well, I think as broad-based as that is, I'm going to pass that question over to Varun. Varun, maybe you could talk about, you've done consulting in technical fields and even in non-technical areas. So how do you think networking helps in the domain of consulting?
So, I mean, consulting is a very broad sort of term for a bunch of different things, right? Generically speaking, someone comes to you and says, I have this problem, help me. Or, I'm in this situation, help me do better. This is typically what happens when someone, either goes to a consulting firm or looks at someone individual and says, here's my problem. A lot of the times, especially in the industry, in the real world, in business, problems are not straightforward. They're not one-dimensional, right? No one's going to come to you and say, if you're an engineer or, here's my problem. It's the set of differential equations. No, that's not how problems in the real world work, right? So you're going to run into issues all the time where you don't know everything you need to know to solve a problem. And that's why you need a network, right? I'm running a restaurant now. With, I don't have any sort of food science or nutrition or hospitality background, right? But I'm able to, get by because, through my network, I was able to speak to people who could advise me, go to this place to source stuff, speak to this person. This is how you hire someone. So all of those things are because you're able to use knowledge that you don't immediately have yourself. Right? You're able to use the knowledge and skills of people that are in your network by, having access to them. And that's fundamentally why consulting, especially so, is very network driven. You're going to be solving problems, or you're going to need to solve problems which do not have simple, straightforward, one field answers. And in order to be able to attack those problems, you need access to all these other tools that you may not immediately have at your disposal. And they're going to come to you through your network.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. In fact, consultants do this all the time. They tend to always have like a panel of experts that they reach out to. It's literally, in a sense of the word consulting, consulting firms also consult professionals. But I think to add on to to what Varun said, I think if you're really enthused by the field of consulting, maybe management consulting, technical consulting, or technology consulting, I think it's important for you to intern and get a hands-on feel of that sector. It goes a long way in sort of building a network. And by the way, if consulting firms hire at all, it's either on campus, which means they do visit some of the top schools, B schools, and engineering campuses across the country. The only other reason why they hire is through references. So in a sense, how does it help with networking? It helps you find a job in the consulting industry. It helps you do better once you are a consultant. And I guess it also helps you get other people in from your networks. Right? So I think it sort of closes the loop on that.
If I can just add to that with regards to working or getting hired into consulting, I think apart from, acquiring technical expertise, oftentimes one of the most important things you're going to do as a consultant is be able to present your knowledge to someone who may not have that knowledge or even things that underpin that knowledge available to them. So oftentimes you need to talk about the things you know about, and being good at that is also incredibly important as a consultant. You need to be able to present knowledge, findings, and ideas, maybe more so than having them.
That actually ties in very beautifully to the next question that that Raju Mohan is asking me. He's saying, uh, actually, no, this is the one by PK, is it? How does networking help in an international sense, in a global perspective? Because these are the times that we live in, and I guess I'm going to ask Aditya to respond to that. I mean, surely you've had this tumultuous journey of deciding to first go explore the environs of the source outside of India, and then for some weird motivation you decided to come back here, right? So how do you think networking helped you decide to go abroad in the first place? Come back.
But I think that's a great question. Also, I've learned quite a bit about all these panelists here. I've had multiple conversations with all of these guys about networking and how we even came together in the first place. Very interesting that you still continue to learn when they speak. I haven't of course met a lot of them on like a very formal setting. This I think is the closest formal setting that we've been on together, because I've worked with Atul before, so I know his capabilities as a networker. And I've worked with Krishna on a few projects, but this is very, very interesting. And I think this is all going to tie into what I have to say about international networking and how that's going to help. So when I answered the first question a long time ago at the beginning of the last hour about how networking and how advice from people who work in the space got me into this industry, I think that was why I even decided to go up. I was playing a lot of sport as well. That's another commonality that the common denominator that we have on this panel is we built our first network with sport. We learned to work as a team because we played team sports, not just individual sports, which I think laid the foundation of how you approach social situations and how you network and how you interact. And how I think, as very astutely pointed out by both Roshini and Varun, how you share values with people and not just look to gain just a very superficial understanding of moving forward. So when you take this and you approach it on an international sense, I think sport is again a global denominator, global common denominator. GCD actually, for that matter. So a global common denominator was sport for me as well. That's when I went onto the international space. That got me cracking, as an icebreaker in conversations. But here we're just talking about a peer group, right? And when you start sharing those values and when you start building on those initial interfaces that you make with people, then you can start digging a little deeper, all right? So now I'm going to provide a little bit of context on what that did for me, because I wasn't very good at this even when I went for my master's at Delft. Delft, I thought, Delft is a great school. The name is going to open doors for me. I am an ISB. I thought the name is going to open doors for me in the industry. And by then I had decided to pursue solar more than wind. But the market at that point of time was not great for solar. The German solar industry was on a downward spiral because of the Chinese market here, which are ramping up. These are some things that you are aware of, but until you're in the fire and you start looking for opportunities and jobs and just an international network, you really don't know the extent to which it can impact you, right? So I remember right after my master's that I'm going to give this number to most of these aspiring graduates and students. I applied for 256 jobs and I received one interview call right after my master's, 1 out of 256. Very interestingly, so I was doing my master's in Europe. I finished my master's half a year in advance because I thought, oh no, I have to get into the industry right now. The industry is not looking good. How do I, build on this sort of a situation? And I was networking on a very basic level at that point of time, reaching out to people on LinkedIn, just connecting with them. Did not know how to write to them. Like interfacing messages on LinkedIn is very, very important, and how you follow through with them is even more so. And the first response that I got, or rather the only response that I got amongst those 256 applications, was by a person who had seen my research work being published on an international scientific journal. And I had just happenstance connected with them like a week ago. And it didn't strike me at all that that person worked in the space, in the company that was reaching out to me. But I got an opportunity to actually move from Europe to the US. It's not a very common jump for an Indian to get that kind of an opportunity to move from Europe to the US. I got a research fellowship to go and work at the Fraunhofer Center for Sustainable Energy at MIT, which was mind-boggling, right? But when I got there and I said, now I work as part of Fraunhofer, within 3 months of updating my LinkedIn profile and connecting with a few other people, obviously the fellowship was a 6-month engagement, maybe extended to a year. So I got it extended to a year, but within 3 months, recruiters started reaching out to me because the name of the profile helped. But also I was able to open up conversations with a lot of people in the international community because now I was so-called part of it. So I used that as a very big key to open conversations and be like, and whenever I reached out, right, like even I think I was 23 at that point of time. So whenever I would reach out, and this is an advice for everybody here, just reach out as a mentee and a mentor, exploring a mentee-mentor relationship. That always works. Don't reach out with a, an objective of just saying, hey, get me a job. That never works. It never, ever works. What I found works was, you learn about the person's experience, right? They might be able to help you they might be able to recommend you for an internship, or they might not, but it is going to stack up to something that's a lot bigger. And when I got into the fellowship, Sun Edison, my former employer, reached out to me. I was asked to interview for a senior leadership development program, which I thought was amazing because I went from having one reply from 256 job applications to having I think a hit rate of about maybe 5 in 20 job applications. My odds really improved because I was starting to reach out to the right people. I understood how to reach out to these right people. And when I got into Sun Edison, I think by then I had really understood that I wanted to get into business development. I liked strategy. I like market strategy. I like speaking to people. And you have to, as I said earlier in the call, you have to consciously sit and work on it like a skill. You need to understand how to speak with people, how to read people's emotions during conversations. You don't have to be an excellent judge of character, but you need to be a good listener. And you always listen to the people who are speaking to you, right? And when I say listen, it's not like listen and act upon. I'm just saying listen. Just pay a lot of attention to what they are saying, because you can listen to them and then take a decision to not follow their advice, which is great, right? As Roshini said, it could be a selection by elimination. So you'll know that, hey, okay, so I've eliminated how not to go about doing things, and now I know how I can focus on going about doing things. So I think these things will matter quite a bit. And when I eventually, Anand, I came back to India because I had no choice. My company went bankrupt. so Atul and I rode that wave, and so I came back to India because of that. In hindsight, it's worked out amazingly for me because now I have an international community because I did a couple of rotations in the US. I have very strong connections now because of my effort, but also the company gave me a platform and an opportunity to really network with a lot of people on the East Coast, in New York, in the Bay Area, in Chicago for that matter. And because I had done my master's in Europe, I have a strong network in Europe. Much as I would have liked to be like Varun, maybe gone to Australia and Africa as well. I think having these connects in Europe and the US really helped me when I moved back to India, because the next job that I took up was as the head of an international business strategy for a consulting company, for a product and solutions company, which really helped because I had made connections in these two places. And of course, I'm not going to say I thought about all of these things, but they are the people with money and they invest very heavily in developing economies. And I was supposed to go after developing economies and help create, opportunities over there for my company. So when they see that I'm connected with people, when my prospective clients see that I'm connected with these, or my prospective partners see that I'm connected with these people, it opens doors automatically. So what happens is, you sort of are caught in the middle of a snowball effect where, you're rolling from the west to the east and the east to the west. So now, I've been very lucky. It opened doors for me in Africa. It opened doors for me in Australia, the Pacific Islands, the Indian Ocean Islands. So now I'm one phone call away from at least having honest feedback about a country being given to me, right? which is what I can say. I think yes, I think Atul also touched upon it. I think you have to excel in what you're doing, but you have to put in a lot of effort, and you have to listen, and you have to really understand what the other person is speaking about, and then take it and apply it somewhere. I don't think we put a lot of emphasis on learning by doing. And again, as I said, it's a hit or a miss thing. Networking is a hit or a miss thing. So from an international perspective, you're going to get a lot of rejections from people who are not going to be interested in speaking with you at all. But that's how you learn, right? In a lot of cases, it takes a couple of things to get people interested in you, and in some cases, all it takes is just one. And in some cases, you're not going to hear back from anybody. But the idea is to keep the good fight going. That's what I did, and it's sort of worked out for me in the long run. So yeah, just keep at it. International business development is very interesting, but always go prepared. I think that's the biggest learning I can take away. Like when you're opening a conversation, it doesn't matter if it's an analyst or if it's a CEO or a vice president or a director or a lab technician. Go prepared for your interface meetings, because if they sense that you're not prepared at the beginning, it doesn't matter even if it's a casual catch-up, right? It's very important that you go prepared, you understand the market, you understand what you're speaking about. I mean, Krishna is not there on the panel right now, but for example, he was being very modest, and I know Anand was going to speak about it. For a lot of, I'm sure a lot of you on this panel on this panel right now don't know, but Krishna actually worked for the Arsenal Football Club, and he's consulted. He's a sports data scientist. He's consulted for a lot of NBA teams in the National Basketball Association in the US, and is currently doing a lot of work with the IPL in India, right? But in typical Christian fashion, he got to the point. But all of that was also, I'm just stepping in and some for him and representing him, and I'm saying I've been part of the journey. I've seen him work, and it all comes down to networking on an international stage, right? So one sport helped him open doors in another sport, which then helped him open it up. So his technical skills kept improving, but he was prepared. He approached the situation really well, and I think I've also learned to do that a little better with more and more iterations. So that's how you go about building an international network. Sorry for the roundabout answer, but I think I had to take the time to explain that. So thanks, Anand.
And I would thanks for that discussion, Adi. I think you've answered 3 questions along the way. I guess PK was asking me how do we not have an agenda to a conversation when you're networking. And I think what Aditya tells us is that you need to go in prepared. You need to do a little bit of research. The person you're meeting comes with a particular background in terms of where he studied, where he's lived, what his interests are. So if you do a little bit of groundwork on that, there is context that you can go in prepared for that meeting. And another question that I think you answered, Aditya, is how do we overcome fatigue? And I think that's the one that you answered the most, because I mean, surely the fear of rejection and the fatigue of just repeatedly facing rejection can happen over LinkedIn. I mean, sure, that's the way it works out today, but it can even happen in person. And I guess the idea is to keep at it, because end of the day, you have your best interest at heart. So
just to quickly piggyback on that fatigue portion, right? Like, I'm not going to say I was always positive. I think I'm not sure. I think my mom might be attending this call. I'm not sure if she's on the call right now, because she wanted to see how we as panelists are performing. But they've seen the worst of me. Like, what you start realizing is things are going to happen. You just have to do the groundwork. It's going to take time, and fatigue and burnouts do happen, but it doesn't mean that you have to get stuck in that rabbit hole. I have gotten really down and out. Just imagine getting one reply out of 256 job applications, right? So you can go down and out. I'm not saying I just walked out of it and I said, oh yeah, this is the way of life. It's an experience. Everyone goes through it in different ways. But it's important that, as Anand said, just focus on the positive. Now I didn't have this kind of a forum. I didn't have Mentors Capital back then, or maybe I did, but digital media wasn't social media was not as big back then, right? I mean, I'm not that old. I'm just 31, but I'm just saying, 10 years ago, the conversation was a lot different, and I didn't use the platforms maybe as well as I should have. But now that these kind of people are speaking to all of us, I think that is a very big takeaway that we can say and reach out and really understand from people's experiences.
And just to reiterate to the audience, Aditya still claims that he's an introvert. So I guess I'll ask you to make your own judgment on that. Okay, we have a very interesting set of questions, and I'm going to point them at Roshini. Roshini, we spoke about building alternative networks, finding and discovering newer networks to tap into, and I think this is a related question. How in these current times, lockdown at all, how does what's the best way to network? That's one question that comes from Raju Mohan, and there's another question that I think is a related sort of question is how does interning with a startup, how does that experience help you, right? And I think you could probably throw a little more light on this.
I'm so sorry. Could you just quickly repeat your first question? I think
Yes.
the connection.
So the question was in this environment of being under lockdown, everything being online, when you're networking with somebody, A, how do you find newer networks to tap into? And B, are there any do's and don'ts? I mean that you need to observe given that it's lockdown and there are restriction in terms of connecting with people face to face.
Okay. So, I mean, I do understand that a lot of times when people want to network, they go to like networking events, and the current situation does pose a big disadvantage. I think just like for me, I think a lot of times I know the people that I want to get in touch with. The difficult part is how to get in touch with them. Because there are also a lot of different platforms now that people are on, like, there are people on Instagram, there are people on LinkedIn. I think the difficulty is more in terms of how do I get in touch with this person? In terms of do's and don'ts, I think of it as, consider two things, right? So there is the platform that someone is active on, and then there is the platform that someone is using for a professional network. And you sort of find that intersection. Let's say if someone's on Instagram for their personal use, and they're on LinkedIn for a professional use, and you see that they're fairly active on both platforms, but you want to reach out to them because you have like a professional ask. You stick to LinkedIn, right? The second that you reach out to someone on Instagram, it does not give the best impression like off the bat. Another thing that I sort of see a lot of people doing is, okay, so you've reached out to someone, you've sent them a message or you send them an email, and you're sitting here expecting a response, and you haven't gotten one. I think a lot of times it is because you haven't asked them for anything specifically, right? You have said, hey, this is my name, I do this, I studied here, like I have an interest in this, and you've said all these things, but your ask is still very vague. I think you just need to get very specific with your ask. You can say, do you have time for like a quick 10-minute conversation to discuss this topic? We can get in touch on this platform, right? It becomes very easy for this person to just say yes or no. If it's no, maybe like here's an alternate, like can I suggest we get in touch with this time? But the second you don't have a very specific ask, this person needs to put in so much more effort to respond to you. And for someone that doesn't know you, why should they, right? Yep. I just think the specificity of ask is very, very important. And I think, so I just wanted to quickly, something that Atul was talking about, he was talking about, how genuine you need to be while sort of, getting in touch with people and talking with people. I just want to take a second and say that so experiencing, what we do with experiencing, till date, we have not reached out, we have not gone out there to even one person and said, hey, do you want any kind of digital marketing services? Not once. Till date, we have not done that once. We have not gone to Google and said, this is the vendor that we want, like who are the best players in Chennai who do this. We have not reached out to find employees. All of this has sort of come to us, and it is because we have genuinely taken an interest in what people do, right? For me, you can think of this as like a quick tip, if you might. When you're talking with someone, the thing that I do is I never say this is what I do. I always ask the other person what they do, right? And something that I have noticed is people like to talk about themselves. They love to talk about themselves, right? And they will. The second that you ask someone what they do, and you pick a topic of interest and ask them for their opinion on it, they're very happy to talk about themselves. And 5 minutes has passed. You've already made a relationship without saying anything at all, and they are more likely to ask you, "Hey, what do you do?" And now you have someone that's a lot more interested in you, right? And I think even with what we do with our work, a lot of people think of networking just in terms of am I getting a referral, or am I being placed for a job, or am I getting like a lead? I think what I have gained most from all the networking that I do is just people's ideas, right? It has helped us price better. It has helped us develop better products. It has helped us find vendors, find employees, all of these things, right? And when we network, when we didn't particularly need it, we found people when we wanted it, right? You like it again, just going back to what everyone said, like the genuinity of it, where it really pays off is when you need it, you really don't have to do it. It's all there,
Yeah.
right?
All right. And I think there's one part of that question that I asked Roshini that I would actually like to divert now to Krishnan, because it, well, for two reasons actually. One, that it has to do with startups, and you work with startups for a living right now, but also because I think amongst the panel, we sort of largely felt that you haven't told us more about your stint with the Arsenal football team. And I think the audience as well as us would like to, I would like to hear more about that. So Krishnan, here's the question that I got, that we have from an audience. How does interning with a startup, with a new company, trying to make it big, how does that help, right? In terms of, and I want your perspective as somebody who's gone through the process of applications, but also somebody who's sitting on the other side of the table now, probably recruiting candidates.
So I would say the experience is very different based on what stage the startup is in. An early stage startup would mean that you would be doing a lot of things. So I would compare it to something like you're going and having a buffet versus you're going to like a specific cuisine when you go to a much more developed startup. And I think, let's say you go into a startup that's just a few months old, you will you could do a lot of things, right? From social media marketing, and you could end up doing something like, you would be doing a bit of coding. You would be doing, sometimes you will have to just take papers and move, keep connections, pay bills, whatnot, right? Like
Yeah.
there will be a lot of things that you will realize, you could say the grunt work when you are in a very early stage startup. But when you're at a startup that's 3 to 4 years old or 5 years old, I think at that point of time, a lot of processes would already be in place, and you might not have to do a lot of that as much as you would expect.
Yeah.
And so there would be teams in place, and in those situations, you would just be getting into a team, and then it will be a lot more technical in that sense. You won't have a lot of paperwork that you would be handling. Sometimes teams may not know what they are doing in a very early stage, and because they have a lot of things to do. But once things are settled and it gets going, then you will end up doing a lot more than what you'll be doing a lot more technical and much more focused work.
I think also from a networking perspective, I think joining a startup could be an excellent opportunity, because
Definitely. It depends on also what type of a startup it is, right? Like people always think about this Silicon Valley example for being like a startup, but startups can be as simple as a couple of people sitting in their garage doing something, right? Like at that point of time, the only person you would be interacting is the other person. And so let's say they've decided to post a job offer or like a job description on something like Angel List. So Angel List is a very common tool, or like a very common platform where everybody goes and checks jobs at startups. And so if I'm assuming that two people in a garage end up posting something on Angel List, then you actually might not have a lot of interaction with them. But if the startup is located in something like a startup accelerator or like a innovation hub, so to speak, then you would come into contact with a lot of companies, right? So your next room is going to be another company, the room next to that is going to be another company, and the entire building will be completely different. You will have networking events where they'll have pizza, and they'll ask people to come and sit in on a Friday. They'll talk about new ideas. Not necessarily all of them are going to be good ideas, but then it will just be a very energetic location, and then you will start feeling inspired in those situations, and that'll be fun. So it depends, right? Like it depends on what suits your need. So you could still feel like I want to like shut myself off from everything, go work in a small place where I just want to be very focused, or I can just go and be this at this startup accelerator and do a lot of things there. So it can change based on what your startup is or where you're applying.
And just to give this a little more context, because a lot of you guys on the poll mentioned the very reason you're looking at an internship, and a big reason, I mean, I think more than 50% of you said, I'd like either to experience an area that I would like to explore, or get a new, get to experience whether it's a passion area for me. That's one response. I think it's very interesting, because if you're looking to intern, I think the general sense is try to do 3-4 of them, and make sure that one of them is at the startup, so that you get to see a new way of working, because startups are very different in terms of how they're structured, in terms of how roles are defined, in terms of how you communicate from run-of-the-mill corporate behemoth. So that's one thing I would really recommend. And the other point I want to add to what Krishnan just put is the fact that if and this happens to be the second big reason for people doing internship is I want to put stuff on my resume. I want things to speak out in terms of experiences that I had. And I think this a startup is probably a gold mine in terms of what you can put on your resume, because like Krishnan said, you could be doing everything under the sun. You could be probably in charge of sales and marketing, outreach, customer service, paying the bills, everything under the sun. And you're also speaking to the proprietor, the owner of the startup. So
yeah,
probably comes with that, extra bit of weightage.
Right. And even when you're in a very early stage startup, right, like because a hierarchy isn't built into the company already, you would end up having a lot of informal sessions with the founder, the co-founder, the people who are actually having the idea and they're trying to build it out. So your ideas can actually carry a lot more weight than it was if you come in a little late into the company. So you end up becoming friends with the founders, the co-founders, and I don't know. So the example, I mean, there are a lot of examples of that. Like you would have heard stories of like early employees of Apple whose stocks are now worth like plenty, or like the same thing even with Flipkart, right? Like some of the early employees of Flipkart are now like worth millions. So that's an added benefit to like going and working for an early stage startup. Again, to keep in mind, a lot of startups do fail. So it's very important to take note that failure is a norm and success is an exception with startups, because roughly about 5 to 6% of startups end up crossing like this threshold. Most startups end up like just plateauing at a level. So I would say that success is an exception with startups, and failure or like stagnation is sort of a norm. So you have to like find your right experience in a lot of places.
Interesting. Trust the data scientist to put some numbers behind, history. I think I certainly hope that we've done a good job of answering all the queries. Well, I certainly hope you guys had a good time with our discussion. I know for a fact that we did. I'm going to leave you with this parting thought that networking might not be the most important factor to succeed in life, but it certainly is the most impactful one. Have a great weekend, and here's a big goodbye from all of us and the Mentors Capital family. Do check out the website. Do connect with each one of these mentors directly on a one-to-one basis too. Right. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye. And I'd like to thank every one of our mentors today: Varun, Aditya, Krishna, Roshini, and Atul, who's left already. But it was great to have you on board today. It was. I know we've taken more than our share of time today, but yeah, hope to do more of these sessions.
Thanks for the opportunity, Anand. Love connecting.
Thank you, Anand. Good luck
Good
to
luck,
everybody.
to everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Yeah.